Well, good morning to you all on Friday the 30th of May. It's been an horrendous week for the Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, but for many I'm sure it hasn't been a surprising week. Those who know the man would hardly be surprised, as Dennis Shanahan, writing today in The Australian, says Mr Rudd must either change his style or face more debilitating crises such as this week's petrol price disaster. And he made the point that there's no doubting the intent behind the leaks. He said the leaks from government and the public service go to the issue of the conduct, direction and style of the Rudd government. Dennis Shanahan talks about deep rifts within the cabinet and a view within the public service that good policy is being sacrificed to solve publicity stunts. Indeed, he argues that the Rudd government is ill-defined, quote, except for symbolism and stunts. And Dennis Shanahan writes, there are Labor figures who are concerned that micromanagement and media manipulation are no substitute for having a leader with a broad and substantive policy direction, unquote. That is shorthand for what I've been saying. No grasp of detail. As Dennis Shanahan says, this week's leaks, wherever they came from, underline the fact that unless the government can articulate what it stands for, that it can't hope to hide behind stunts that don't deliver. Well, it's not just petrol. An inexperienced government with a totally inexperienced leader doesn't understand that once you start alienating minorities, they together become anti-government and they form a powerful majority. Let's forget for the moment the pensioners who've been totally left out. Taxing family cars costing more than $50,000 was always a nonsense policy, especially when the cost of the vehicle is most probably related to its safety and its green credentials. Then you've got the mental health issue. Fancy taking over $300 million away from those with mental illness. Fancy making it harder for people to afford private health insurance, or $500 million from farmers drowning in drought, or scrapping the Simpson Prize, an Anzac Day tour giving school children the chance to visit Gallipoli. It only costs $170,000. Then there's the Alco-Pop nonsense. Increase the tax on these ready-to-drink drinks, and kids then mix their own drinks from spirits which carry less of a tax. How can that be public policy of any kind? But then any number of inquiries, committees and reviews in the handful of months since Mr Rudd became the government, more than 100 new reviews and summits and agencies, but no decisions. We're drowning in the stuff. And then, sensing trouble, Mr Rudd starts manipulating the media. And the ABC, amongst others, complaining of what is, quote, verging on thuggery. As one writer said, people are abusing their positions in this place. The Victorian Liberal Senator Michael Ronaldson said, this is a government in 6 months that's totally out of control. This is also a government that's managed to upset Japan, which for months was ignored and left off the Prime Minister's 18-day overseas world tour. But not averse to spending money when it's of no demonstrable benefit. The jaunt to sign the Kyoto Protocol in Bali last year cost almost $500,000. Mr Rudd's hospitality for 2 nights in Bali, 2 nights, almost $40,000. And he took with him 5 ministers, 12 ministerial staff and 35 bureaucrats to sign off on Kyoto. While we're grinding under the need for infrastructure reform, we get no decisions other than $75 million in the budget for, you guessed it, another study to consider how to proceed with a number of infrastructure projects. And on top of all of this, the real crisis for Kevin Rudd this week in ignoring the advice of 4 major departments over Fuel Watch. There are serious rumblings within the government over the leadership. Dennis Shanahan is right when he refers to Labor figures who today, and I quote, are concerned that micromanagement and media manipulation are no substitute for having a leader with a broad and substantive policy direction, unquote. Well, Mr Rudd doesn't have that. Indeed, he never has. But it'll be interesting to see where he goes if he doesn't soon find one. What we've seen this week may be the tip of a policy iceberg. I'm Alan Jones.